Hello everyone, on behalf of YourStory, welcome all of you to our outstanding session today on the future of tech hiring. My name is Madan from the research department at YourStory. As you all know, the COVID-19 pandemic has sent global economies spinning towards an uncertain future. The hiring landscape has also undergone a sea change in the last few months, and it continues to evolve even as we speak. In fact, a recent report by KPMG in India found that across all job levels, 66% of organizations have deferred or suspended their hiring schedules. 30% have decreased their hiring headcount budget in light of the COVID-19 pandemic. The survey also threw light on the urgent need and readiness of organizations to adapt to alternative ways of working and living. Staying on top of the emerging recruitment trends is very essential for recruiters to build an effective hiring strategy for the future. Remote working and hybrid working have become the norm. To dig into these trends, challenges, and opportunities, we have three outstanding speakers today. First, we have Andreela Chauhan. Hi, Andreela. She's the Director for Global Talent Acquisition for India at Microsoft. She has over 24 years of experience under her belt, covering HR strategy, talent management, talent acquisition, and HR operations. This is across manufacturing, telecom, consulting, FMCG, and IT sectors. She earlier was with Coca-Cola, Hewitt Associates, Philips. Welcome, Andreela. Joining her also is Manoj Kenadath, who's the head of talent acquisitions India at Atlassian. Manoj is a talent acquisition leader with close to 2 decades of experience in the computer software industry. In his current role, he's building and scaling the Bangalore R&D site. He was earlier with LinkedIn, Thomson Reuters, and HP before joining Atlassian in 2018. Welcome, Manoj. And last but not least, we have
everyone.
Vishnu, who's the head of the people practice at ClearTax India. Vishnu has a storied career in talent acquisition and human resource spanning over 17 years. He was earlier with Microsoft, Yahoo, Myntra, and Ola, among others, before joining ClearTax also in 2018. Welcome, Vishnu. So my first question to all of you is, obviously the pandemic has been the biggest trend of this year. How has the pandemic affected your recruiting goals? What does the hiring landscape look like in your industries? Let's begin with you, Andreela.
I think, yeah, well said. It has had significant impact this year, the pandemic trend, as you call it. How has this affected our recruitment goal? Well, I would say significantly, in the sense that for the first time ever, we're starting to imbibe in our recruitment strategies things like virtual hiring, which have, as you said, become literally a part of our recruiting processes, recruiting strategy, therefore. Internal hiring, reskilling, those have become very, very important. And I think the biggest thing what we've realized is the opportunity for diversity with options, like you said, hybrid working, remote working. That opens up far more options for women talent, talent from non-metros and tier 2, 3 cities, people with disabilities. I think those have now formed definitely part of our recruitment strategies as we think through those.
Thanks, Andreela. That's good news for our audience that you are hiring and that you also introduced expanded on this new element of diversity and inclusion. That's very encouraging news for our audience. How about you now, Manoj? What is your take on the industry and your own company's outlook for hiring in the era of the pandemic? Manoj?
So I think plus one to a bunch of comments which Andreela made. And for us, top of the chart has definitely been empathy. Both from a candidate perspective and from an interviewer perspective. It's not easy. Transitioning to a remote interviewing has not been an easy journey. So plus one to that, diversity, definitely an opportunity for us to hire broadly has been a key for us over the last 6 to 9 months. As an organization, Madan, we are over 2 years in India, right? So we started the India R&D division in 2018. And we have grown aggressively over the last 2.5 years. We are close to 700 employees in India. And that journey has not slowed down. So if I were to look at, if I look at the pandemic period, I would say that 25% of our headcount, we hired them in the pandemic phase. So that talks about the aggression that we have kept going in India and across other major sites where we operate in. And I don't see that slowing down while we continue to operate now or even in the future. So great investments. We announced moving to cloud as an organization this year, which has just added the need to bring in more talent. And moreover, we also announced early this year on Team Anywhere, which is more announcing as an organization to go remote. And I know, Andreela, you spoke about hybrid working. And while we are working through the details, we believe that hybrid working opportunity is going to open up much more talent landscape and the addressable market for us over the next few months and in the near future.
Thanks, Manoj, for bringing in the topic of cloud-based operation, especially for global organizations. Now, Vishnu, you are from a very different industry. Let's turn now to Vishnu from ClearTax. Vishnu, what is your take on the pandemic's impact on hiring, and what is your outlook for the future? Vishnu?
Plus one from a lot of things what Andrea said and also what Manoj said, right? We did hit a reset button, but the reset was towards the positive trend. We added 30% of our workforce during the pandemic time. It was like really, really challenging time. And even now, we continue to add, we continue to look for tech folks, we continue to look for operations category. Across board, we are expanding for our growth charters. So the pandemic per se did not affect us for the hiring needs at least. But yeah, the different other challenges it has posed, like how Andrea said, adoption to technology. HR has been pretty sluggish to adopt technology, right? And then other functions in the company. But this is forced literally to innovate in terms of how do you hire better, how do you onboard better, how do you retain people better, how do you build an engagement program around it. And human beings are not accustomed to interacting through computers, right, or virtually. They're more people oriented. So this has thrown up a big challenge for all HR folks in terms of how do you learn better, how do you adapt better in these circumstances, and how do you deal with the current situation. So a lot of problem solving involved, but yeah, it's challenging times, it's fun times in terms of like the uniqueness of the challenges what it posed to you. But fortunately, we are from tech industry, and the tech industry continues to innovate during these times, and more players are coming online, which is a good thing, right, in terms of how the industry is evolving.
Thanks, Vishnu, for acknowledging the challenges that we're going through, but also the opportunity that's opening up. Let's turn to Manoj now. Manoj, let's pick up on this discussion over here and talk about what are you doing to lift employee morale to boost productivity. Now that we have so much of virtual onboarding, virtual work, very little in-person contact, how do you manage to maintain that kind of office culture that you have? How do you keep employees engaged, and how do you lift employee morale so that productivity doesn't dip? Manoj?
That's definitely an interesting question, and I'm sure we are evolving and finding the right answers for that. We ran a recent survey which was called Reworking Work as a report that we published recently, and there were some India-specific numbers which were very interesting to observe. One, there was 66% of workforce in India who have said that they don't see themselves coming back to work full time. And the surprising fact was we ran this survey across multiple other geographies, and India ranks the highest in terms of the workforce saying 66% ranks the highest globally in terms of workforce saying that they're not going to come back. So if you look at some of these data points in isolation and together, I think this is going to stay. The hybrid work model or the flex model or opportunity that we need to offer is going to stay here for much longer period of time. So if that's going to be the reality, organizations need to take a step back and look at how do we make that happen, right? And how do we stay connected and keep the morale high? What we have done at Atlassian, Madan, one, I think listening has been a core focus for us as a company. And we wanted to make sure that we listen to the employees very often and get to understand the pulse of how each of them are feeling. So one thing that we've done very consistently from day one of we going remote, we run pulse surveys. We ask employees about how are you feeling this week? How are you feeling this month? What is it that you would like us to do better? What is it that you would have liked us to do differently? We have heard a lot of those feedback, and we have gone back and incorporated a lot of those into the way we are working, even in terms of benefits, right? to give you some examples, I think Vishnu, you spoke about extended time off. We made sure that employees are given time off either to take care of themselves, or if you have dependent family, which we realized that when you start working from home, you have a much larger family to take care of. So not being able to focus on work because you have to invest your time in taking care of your family was a big ask we heard from our employees. So we made sure that we have extended time off that we've offered. That's one. Second, we have started looking at uh, running very often founder updates. So we call it the founder updates. So either Scott or Mike, one of our co-founders, or both of them together, there is a very regular update that they send, and it's a video. We consciously made it a video. It's not a written content. We believe that's consumed better. And they want to make sure that they are talking very regularly to the employees. So whether it's updates on how things are happening, updates on remote working, and so on and so forth, that's worked really well for us. Something very unique that we have done, I think globally we call it the Atlassian coffee shop, and we have run it very differently, wherein you get paired randomly with one of your colleagues from anywhere in the world. And you're encouraged to have a 30-minute coffee chat. One thing that we heard a lot of our employees say is they're missing the water cooler conversations. They're missing that flexibility that they had to just walk up, pick up a cup of coffee and have a chat. We heard that as a feedback. So we said, okay, why don't we do this? And we came up with this coffee shop, Atlassian coffee shop concept, wherein you nominate yourself there, you get randomly paired with someone, and you get to keep those conversations going. So we have looked at all of those in making sure that we stay connected, bring in some personal connect to what employees are going through. We have made all our rituals remote. We have a quarterly Ship It, which is our hackathon for employees. We have gone 100% remote on that. We have come up with mental health investment for our employees so that we give them the required support and assistance through this phase. So, and I think we heard about the Fun Fridays, right? And we have DJs on Fridays, and that's something which is most liked by a lot of people. And we had cooking for kids. So one day you had a Zoom screen full of kids trying to maybe bake or make a cake and so on and so forth. So evolve, making sure that we try and do, and I don't think anything is going to be less that we do in the current situation, Madan. So those are some of our initiatives from an Atlassian point of view.
Thanks, Manoj. Again, some very good examples from you. The Pulse survey, the video from the founder, the Atlassian coffee chat, the DJs on Fridays. Those are all great examples. In fact, I recently reviewed a book called The Serendipity Mindset, and the author talks about how the biggest casualty with work from home is this serendipitous interactions in coffee shops, in bars, cafes. So now you have to recreate all that somehow online. But it is possible. It's difficult, but it's still possible. You brought up the mention of HR adoption of technology. Let's drill that into a bit more right now. My question of Andreela is, Andreela, a lot of hiring is now happening online. So how do you manage to make sure that both the recruitment side and the hiring side both have a good experience? How can recruitment teams be successful online? And at the same time, how can candidates get a good experience online? How are you managing both these ends of the spectrum? Andreela?
Sure. I agree with what Vishnu said, right? It's brought in a lot of changes within HR and talent acquisition as a function. While we were always there were parts of our company, our businesses that had adopted virtual hiring. It wasn't absolutely new to us, but what happened was virtually overnight, we had to shift to virtual experience, right? With the lockdown, it just became imperative for us to design a completely virtual experience that above all kept in mind our candidate experience. Few things that we had to keep in mind were that through this virtual online experience, we were allowing for sound assessment and decision making for our interviewers, our hiring managers, right? We allowed for a program rather that allowed for flexibility, which became the need of the hour for candidates as well as for the interviewers as well. I think Manoj or Vishnu talked about making connections. It's not easy, right? Overnight, you were interacting with a computer screen versus a real person, and it's really difficult to make that shift. And therefore, the right use of tools and technology to build those real connections became very, very crucial. I think what helped with in our case were a few things. Our collaboration tool that we use for all these meetings, it's of course Teams, just making sure that our candidates are more comfortable with the technology that we are using. They are comfortable with Teams much beforehand, way before the meeting.
Thanks, Angela. You rightly pointed out that expectations and roles are changing. So my question for you now, Manoj, is are candidates, especially those from the technology community, are they open to exploring new roles? What attracts them to work in companies like yours? How are they responding to some of your recruiting campaigns and messages? What is the employee end of the picture now, Manoj?
I think that's a very interesting question, and if I were to summarize it, I think adapting and really looking at what your candidates are looking for is the key. So the way we put it, or the way we have tried to make it happen, is do we have strong, compelling stories? Right? We all are going through this phase of uncertainty, and I don't know whether this is the right time to make a job shift. Right? Should I move right now? And what can give confidence to a candidate when they're going through that phase is clearly being able to articulate much more strongly what's the value proposition. Right? Why should you join Atlassian, for example, or Microsoft or ClearTax, for example, right? Being able to narrate that story, I think, is going to be the extreme critical part of being successful. And let's accept it, right? We are all looking and going behind the same talent pool. And every candidate is looking for which opportunity is most closely aligned to my aspirations. So I would say it has become much more important as organizations for us to being able to narrate that story. We all talk about how important storytelling is for recruiters, right? And I think this is a time when organizations need to invest in storytelling as a capability in recruiters, because that's going to be extremely important. And moreover, and when Andreela was talking about some of the other aspects for your earlier question, I think evolving ourselves to some of those changing needs are going to be very critical. Enabling candidates to be successful is going to be important. We came up with certain initiatives like creating candidate hubs, right? So that we can let the candidate know and enable them being successful in terms of, if you're going through a remote interview, how can you prepare better? So investing in ensuring that it's not just you who's going through a change, acknowledging it, it's the candidates who are going through that change, and making sure that you bridge that gap is going to be important. So that's how I would look at the change, Madan, and how we need to enable success and continue to attract talent.
Thanks, Manoj. I like the fact that you mentioned storytelling. We at YourStory, of course, are huge fans of storytelling in every aspect of communication. You brought up the very important point of articulation. So let me ask Vishnu now this question, which is at a time of hiring people online, how do you make sure that the onboarding process goes smoothly? How do you make sure that new candidates who come on board are aligned with your organization's values, culture, and so on? Vishnu?
Yeah, as I said, right, the multiple processes have taken complete overhaul, right? Using technology has become imperative in today's, and also how do you build empathy, as Andreela has mentioned, throughout the process, right? So now the pandemic has tested not just in terms of adopting technology, but has tested every bit of your entire process, right? How well you plan, that is testing the infrastructure, because most of the candidates are no longer present in metros. So they have gone back to their hometowns. So some of the places do not have courier services where you can send out the laptop, etc. So like, how do you then ensure that the onboarding is very clear, right? Digital presence in terms of what kind of bandwidth do they have, what kind of expectations the manager has from them and stuff like that. Aligning all of these things before we create an onboarding plan for the candidate, and also ensuring that continuous connect is there from the hiring manager, from the buddy, from the HR business partners and the operations team. And not just in terms of like establishing a connect through technology, but also reinforcing that through an online survey, one-on-one feedback, etc., and all of that becomes very important in this time phase that we are going through. Right? At ClearTax, we have ensured that we have plugged in most of these gaps in terms of like, how do you use better technology, How do you ensure that using technology, you are able to create a lot of automated surveys, etc., on a timely basis so that you are addressing the gaps, whatever you are probably not foreseen earlier, or there are newer challenges which are coming every now and then, right? So which throw you off spin every time. So ensuring that all these things are tied in and ensuring that you're continuously keeping the pulse of the candidate or the employee, at every given stage. And also this brings into the interesting fact, right? Like as Manoj mentioned, the storytelling and the articulation of culture, vision, and mission becomes so important because everyone is going off the same pool, and your pool is drying up day by day, right? And this in market, some of the unfortunate organizations have 30% acceptance rate, 20% acceptance rate, because everyone is adopting to technology. There are newer players who are entering into the market. There are MNCs which want the same pie. And again, there are Indian startups, which is fortunately flourishing at this point of time, going behind the same target pool of candidates, which was not the case earlier. So that brings us, it becomes very important, right, in terms of how you are articulating every step, right from culture, how do you integrate people, how do you assimilate them into the teams, and constant checking of how they are doing in terms of their day-to-day operations, as well as what kind of support they're getting from their managers in the ecosystem. So we've tied in as a bunch together, and we are ensuring through various touch points how these each of them individually are playing out.
Thanks, Vishnu. As you rightly pointed out, today more than ever before, companies have to have their finger on the pulse of the mood, aspirations, and needs of their employees. You also mentioned people working from their hometown. In fact, like WFH, I'm also hearing WFHT these days, working from hometown. So a lot of people have exited big cities. It's all over the world now. People exiting big cities, going to smaller towns, hometowns, etc. Another big buzzword has been hybrid. So hybrid business model, hybrid workplace. So my next question to Andreela now is, tell us a bit more about how this hybrid workspace model applies to companies like Microsoft. What are you turning, adjusting around? What are your plans for the near term, medium term, and long term? What is the overall outlook for the hybrid workspace? Andreela?
Sure. So we very recently actually announced our hybrid workplace guidelines, right? It starts with a recognition of the fact that flexibility can mean very different things to each one of us, right? And it could be a variety of, it could be dependent on the variety of roles, the business and work requirements, as well as personal needs, right? Depending on whether you require time for the family, you require remote working or working from hometown, as you said. So we built a set of guidance around, which provides for different scenarios that includes changes on all of these aspects, primarily three. We talked about change in work site, that is the place that you're working from, office, business center, home, or, a hometown, where we said that, for about 50, what we've set as standard is for now actually is that 50% or less of the time is expected to be working from a site outside of office, right? And that's something, assuming manager and team are aligned, that's something which has become a given for Microsoft now. The other two aspects of flexibility of hybrid work that we've announced as per the guidelines is work hours. We already have part-time, but this is something that we've extended depending on the requirements of the role as well as the individual. What are the work schedule flexibilities that can be considered between, again, subject to manager and employee discussions and conversations. We've included another aspect of work, flexibility, which is the work location, which is the geographic location where you work from, which could be a different city than the one in which you were hired or you were working in, or it could even be a different country. We've even, that also is within the remit of a work location flexibility. Again, however, there are considerations, important considerations in these cases like, tax, salary, expenses. But all of these subject to discussions with managers and certain approvals are the flexibilities that we have announced in Microsoft as part of the hybrid working.
Thanks, Andreela. So clearly the message of flexibility has to go to the employees and the new people who are joining the company. But Manoj, in your case, how does employee branding apply in this case? How important are employee branding strategies in the current environment? Can you give some examples of some initiatives your company is doing to attract the best talent by using branding as a strategy? Manoj?
Sure. When we talk about employer branding, Madan, I would say it's irrespective of the pandemic or non-pandemic. That to me is an integral part of being able to attract talent and stay relevant, right? It's critical, right? That's the way I look at employer branding. And I can talk about it through the experience that I've gone through and what Atlassian has gone through in India over the last 2+ years. I remember when we started the India operations way back in 2018, the recruiters had to spend at least the first half an hour trying to explain how to pronounce Atlassian and then talk about what we do as a company. The fact that Atlassian is known through the brand, like the moment you say Jira, oh Jira, I know Jira. Then we need to say Jira, that's Atlassian, right? Confluence, oh I know Confluence, that's Atlassian. So that's where we were 2 years back. And we consciously invested a lot in the last 2 years in India, very specifically from a talent brand point of view. In Bangalore, I'm not sure if you have seen, there was a time when we had huge hoardings pretty much across Outer Ring Road till the airport, wherein we wanted to make sure that we bring it to the talent saying that we are in India, we are investing and we are growing. So that's one. And we need to definitely look at employer branding through the way your talent consumes information, right? Is digital. How are you making sure that you present on digital? Are you participating in conferences and events? Are you ensuring that you are making sure that you go to where your talent exists is going to be an integral part of your talent brand strategy? So it's less about talent coming to you. It's more about you going to where your talent target audience exists and where they spend time. Are you making sure that you have enough investments that you're making to be there and create your brand awareness? So extremely critical, irrespective of whether we have pandemic or not. Very important for you to stay relevant to your target audience. Take the message that they would like to hear, right? And bring that connect. And I think we've been talking about storytelling, right? I remember reading a report a couple of years back that most of the talent, a big part of their decision making is workplace. Today, we don't have a physical workspace that we can present to a candidate. So it's all about creating that virtual experience to a candidate and say that, hey, this is our office. Even if you're not in office, this is how your work, a typical day at work would look like. We created something called the lookbook anemia, for example, right? Wherein you have a virtual view of what does it feel to be part of Atlassian. So I can go on and on, Madan. I think talent brand is something which is very close to my heart, and a big fan of how organization needs to continue to invest to make sure that you connect. And I would say if we hadn't invested in talent brand, I don't think as a site we would have been where we are today. So that's the power of talent brand, according to me.
That's a very powerful statement there. Pay attention to your brand and be relevant to your employees. So Vishnu, let's go back to some of the issues you brought up a bit earlier, which is keeping a finger on pulse of the employees. Can you share with us some of the newer employee benefit strategies you have? What are some new innovative employee engagement practices you have? And how you're using these to hire and work in the new normal? Vishnu?
Sure. From hiring standpoint, is leveraging technology, leveraging LinkedIn, leveraging network of individuals within the organizations, and also the interviewers who come, so the interviewee who comes to the organization, right? So at ClearTax, we have devised a mesh network kind of a strategy in terms of how do we communicate our storytelling to everybody, right? And then thereby drawing referrals from candidates, referrals from employees. We have introduced a very cutting edge employee referral program, which doles out many new age gadgets for every referral apart from the referral bonus. And also we have innovated in terms of like giving instant referral bonus, right, for anybody who gets hired. So somebody who gets an offer, gets paid in that particular cycle itself. We would not wait for the person to onboard. So that has created a goodwill across the employee base in terms of proactively ensuring that they take steps to refer. So we have flooded multiple requests on LinkedIn in terms of like, we are hiring for these kind of roles, etc., and stuff like that. So that's gone pretty well, and we have leveraged LinkedIn as a networking tool for attracting the right candidates from the network of our employees and from the network of our candidates as well. Then coming to onboarding specifically, we talked about it a little bit, but in terms of how do we ensure we commoditize the onboarding process, right? So that was quintessential need of the hour when we did the lockdown or when we started working virtually. And how do we first create same experience for everybody, right? So we started giving workstations for most of our employees who join us, along with laptop and other infrastructure facilities like internet connection and all of it. So we ensure that the employees have at least the basic facilities irrespective of where they are. Right? So that set up a commoditization across the board, so people don't have infrastructural challenges, etc. Then, as I said, Andrea used flexibility as a term, right? So like we introduced flexibility and non-flexibility for managers. Flexibility for employees in terms of like, you can start between this time to this time and end your time around this time. But for managers, that we said that there's a mandatory lunch break you need to provide, because people have to cook, people have to do their own stuff and stuff like that. And also at a mandatory end time, right? That beyond this, there are no meetings possible. Right? And ensure, though we are in a growth phase right now, we are trying to ensure that we balance out people's lives, because it's very difficult to work from home and manage their household stuff as well. So at ClearTax, we also given them every month additional leave, which an employee can take as a relaxation leave. Right? This is an addition to whatever leaves they had accrued in the normal process, right? Additional to sick leaves and also privilege leaves and other leaves which are there as a benefits. And apart from this, rewards and recognition become quintessential as well. So like host of rewards, whether it is spot awards, monthly rewards, target-based achievement rewards, and living the values rewards and stuff like that. So like whole bunch of things. We have increased the frequency of that to make it monthly, quarterly, and half yearly and yearly as well. From the periodicity was far more lesser earlier. So those are the things all together. We are trying to increase the engagement, ensure that there's a pulse kept. And I already mentioned that, we're trying to use many automated tools where thereby we're constantly checking the pulse of the organization, right? In terms of how people are doing, what are the help they need and stuff like that. This is apart from the anonymous forums where they can ask questions and all hands and their own team all hands and stuff like that. So the work is cut out clearly for HR folks in terms of ensuring that how do you live with this beast called technology and leverage it better, right? So that's going to be an interesting journey forward. I think it is here to stay for a long time, and it's a good, lot of goodness as well. Let's see how things evolve from here.
Thanks, Vishnu, for those amazing examples you just shared with all of us. I like how you separated them between mandatory and flexible kind of activities and roles. A lot of people are suffering from webinar fatigue and all that these days. So you have to have that sense of a break and a balance and all that. I like how you mentioned stories. I know that Tata Chemicals goes around collecting resilience stories. So the Chief Knowledge Officer collects every Saturday stories of how people have bounced back and done different things and so on. Thanks for that. And thanks for telling us about Fun Friday. I forgot that today's a Friday, but TGIF has now been reborn, I guess, as Fun Friday for many companies. So we have a little more than 10 minutes left. I want to come to our last round of questions now, which is my question now to Andreela is we're coming out now from the shadow of, lockdown, unlockdown, all that stuff, at least in India, though in Europe, they're still under lockdown in some countries. But now the dialogue has shifted to the vaccine. So now there is a new dialogue of hope coming out, which is hopefully with the vaccine, we can go back to maybe some semblance of the old normal business as usual, etc. But in your opinion, what is the future of hiring going to look like? What will happen when these vaccines start coming out and people want to come out again? Will they start being allowed to come back to the office? What is the future of hiring, and will we go back to old habits of hiring once we have this vaccine in place? Or Indra, would you care to speculate on this?
Sure. I think, hiring, like working, will become hybrid in many ways, right? Like I said, virtual hiring would be, so when we get back, let me put it this, when we get back, it's not going to be 100% virtual, right? Because the real connections, no matter how much you use technology, the beast called technology, as to quote Vishnu, there is a need for that essence as well. So we would see a hybrid of a lot of things in the space, in the hiring space. There would be, virtual and in-person hiring that would come in. But it's not just the virtual hiring. We saw actually, I would say, three aspects of virtualization in the employee's life, right from the hiring phase, then the onboarding. Both Manoj and Vishnu talked about that. There was also a very critical piece of virtual internship, and I'm sure other companies may have also faced it, like ClearTax and Atlassian. But for us, one of the first things that struck us, actually, other than virtual hiring and virtual onboarding, was virtual internship. Because internship was, you remember, March was when all of this started happening, the whole roller coaster. One of the first things that was just around the corner was virtual internship, as an example. And Microsoft has large number of interns joining us every year. That's a big pool that we, groom and grow. And one of the first things we did was, before everything else, was to just reach out to every intern that was to start internship with us and ensure and, inform them that the internship is secure with us. And that is not something every company was fortunate enough to, provide that assurance, right? But then thereafter, our university hiring team, they literally, overnight, they changed the whole internship program to be completely virtual, because the attempt was to create something which was almost next to normal, because most of our interns are people who would be entering corporate life for the first time. So how do you give them that experience, right? From pre-boarding, onboarding, to managers and coaches who understand the importance of landing them for the first time in a corporate setup entirely virtually. And then you bring in general dosage of fun and excitement also. So I'm sharing that this is an example, because who knows, in internships may just become a mix of virtual and in person, right? We are launching, as we speak, Springboard, which is our program for women returning to work after a career break. And for the first time, we are going to be looking at Springboard as virtual. So that's going to be a key aspect of, different programs, not just hiring, that will soon become virtual, or a mix of virtual and in person, as I said. And I think this entire, phase of change through COVID has taught a lot of things. I heard, I think Vishnu talk about communication, right? And of course, virtual communication in this place, but the connection and communication have become such an important element of, building culture, right? Our leadership, for example, our leadership today is far more, we ensure that they're far more visible, far more connected, whether it is through, all hands, team meetings, one-on-ones for managers. I think we have very clear expectations of managers to model, coach, and care. And care, when we talk about, I don't think there would be any time, and I hope there isn't any time ever like this, but such an opportunity for managers to model, coach, and care, right? So these are learnings that we would imbibe, and they would hold us for good in the years to come. So they will continue to form a part of the hiring culture and the work culture that organizations will see in the coming years, Madan.
Thanks, Andreela. We're running out of time now. So, Vishnu, my last question to you now is to bring back some of these issues to you, which is what are some of your thoughts on the future of hiring, the future of the workspace as we come to the end of 2020 and go on to 2021? What would you like to leave our audience with in terms of some insights on future of hiring, future of the workplace? Vishnu?
Actually, Andrea and Manoj have covered everything. I don't have much to say, but I would like to reinforce certain statements. Right? First thing, in terms of changing dynamics, the workforce is going to take a complete transformation in terms of where we work, and that also reflects on how we're going to contract with the employees, right? The nature of the contracts will change, because now people have suddenly realized that they were not focusing to their needs of lives very clearly. Right? And now many people do not want to work full time. They do want to take enough breaks. They want to change the way they contract with the organizations. So it's going to be the next wave of change would be in terms of how well we draft the contracts, right? How do we thereby, how the cultural manifestations will happen. And I can't agree more. I keep telling this to all my managers, what Manoj just mentioned about active listening, right? And it is so important today that we inculcate this habit of not talking, but listening, right? And it's going to be a very reverse change for many managers in terms of like, how do I stop talking and start listening, right? And active listening. So we just concluded yesterday night also a training on the same. And we're trying to invite that as a cultural indicator for the organization in terms of how well you listen to your employees, right? And on also, I feel that 2020 has seen a stagnation time, right, in many industries as such. And once the vaccine comes, those industries will start, start working, and then the growth comes back. And the growth is going to start from where we have left for most of the technology organizations, right? So it's only going to be more work. It's not going to be any less work for any one of us, right? So it's going to be interesting how the transition will happen and how the employment, I'm looking for that in terms of like when the people come back to work, they're going to question you in terms of, do I really need to come to office? Do I need to really come to the metro city and work? The same is going to happen with even the workforce area, right? In terms of workmen who come for non-skilled jobs. If they start staying back in the towns or villages where they belong to, because they want to have better living there, then they're seeing what happens during these kind of difficult situations in the cities. And how do you then adopt technology? How do you become a better carpenter, a better electrician for your own home, right? So it's going to be very interesting journey forward for all of us who are city dwellers and looking for as many skill development activities as possible. So it's going to be very interesting from here.
Thanks, Vishnu. Thanks, Andreela. Thanks, Manoj. We are out of time now, but I'm so happy that you've given such good analysis with a framework, with so many good examples, and overall a message of positivity. My 3 takeaways from this conversation would be the 3 T's: talent, technology, and transformation. Companies have to reimagine how they define talent, how they engage talent, and keep them happy and with morale. Technology is going to be even more important as we go ahead, as more and more informal activities go online. Technology automation is going to play a very important part in the future. And transformation. HR plays a very important role in transformation, and this is the need of the hour. How to transform for the new normal, the new abnormal, the new paranormal, whatever you want to call it. On that note, thanks to all 3 of you for a fantastic session. Again, on behalf of YourStory, thank you all. Cheers.